I am here, Atiu Regional Park, Creek. Welcome to Atiu Creek Regional Park near Auckland on the Kaipara Harbour, which has been made famous by my friends from the Button Factory who used to run a festival here called Earthbeat, which was down here. There's a gate over to behind me where you drive down and you get down to this region through here where the area is where the festival was, down the bottom there next to the inlet of this massive harbour, which is apparently the biggest harbour in the southern hemisphere. And I've come all the way up here. This is the opportunity I've had to get up here. The first time I've had the opportunity to get up here in a long time. This is part of the region. This is about an hour and a half from Auckland City. And beautiful day today, but I've come up here because last year in the middle of the year, someone contacted me on my YouTube channel and said that she was obviously very clairaudient, clairvoyant, and tapped into another level of existence. And she was saying that there were elders from a Lemurian temple that were contacting her and saying that I needed to come up here and activate a couple of temples, or be present or find a couple of temples in the Kaipara Harbour region, a couple of Lemurian temples, and these elders would guide me to where the temples were. So I was like kind of blown away by that. She must have watched a video of mine, I think, on either Porongia or the Kaimanawa wall, been drawn to it, and then watched it, and then she reached out to me, calling herself Grid, and told me that in that harbour behind me, which is an enormous harbour with enormous inlets as well through it, it's the biggest harbour in the southern hemisphere, at least, if not one of the biggest in the world, that somewhere in that harbour out there, or around the harbour itself, were a couple of Lemurian temples. And I had to find them, energetically find them. So it's like, for me, energetically, to find these temples, it's about me being here, coming to the land, feeling into the space, and maybe for me now that I'm here, knowing that it's a process to find these temples. I'm not going to get here and just find them like, there they are. But I used a pendulum. I was up here before, driving around down to a place called Bird's Beach, which is that way over there, right on one of the inlets of this enormous harbour. When I was driving around there, I was using a pendulum saying, is this a location where the temples are? Is this a location where I can find the temples? And it was no, and I was told to come up here by the pendulum, and the forces of work through the pendulum to come up here to Atiu Creek Regional Park, and from here I'd be able to access the temples, which kind of makes sense if you look at it like this. The people that were drawn to create Earthbeat down here, why were they drawn to create Earthbeat at this location? Of all the locations in the Auckland area, for 10 years they held a festival down there, a wellness, health and musical festival down there. It's one of the best festivals in the country for 10 years, and it's no longer happening. They pulled the pin on it in 2024, I think, was the last Earthbeat. But they had the festival location there. Why would they do that down there? Of all the places in Auckland where you could have festivals, there are other locations around Auckland where you could have festivals. And of course, they had their reasons for having the festival down there. But my feeling is when they were pulled into that location to activate the space, to activate the energy of the land there for 10 years, and they got right up to 2024, having a year off, I think, in 2022, due to the nature of the COVID passports. They didn't want to do that, so they didn't do the festival in 2022, I think. But they had the festival location down there, and that for me feels like an intuitive ping, as if were activating the land in some way, to prepare for an energetic shift that was coming that would allow these temples to be activated by the energy of the land being activated in the way that when the people were there, bringing the energy to the land. Because Earthbeat was renowned to be a fantastic festival. I never went myself. I got invited 5 times by my friend Sina. I never went once. I never went to Earthbeat. But I didn't feel a draw to be there. And here I am now. The festival's not happening behind me, but I'm here on the land now. We're here in the regional park now, on the whenua. Whenua is the word for the traditional people, the kaitiaki, the guardians of this land who came here. They call it the whenua. Whenua means land. And the connection to the land for these people, very powerful because it's more of a spiritual connection to the land. So the Ngāti Whātua, or the Whātua, the people that arrived here in canoes, wakas, around this region here. And they first arrived from the Pacific Islands, further north, the Cook Islands. When they arrived here, or from other parts of this Polynesia, when they arrived here, they arrived around here. The first wakas arrived around here, of people called Whātua, called themselves Whātua. They arrived here, and they migrated south from here into what's now called Auckland City. So it's fascinating to be up here now and to feel into the land and to feel into the harbour. And I used a pendulum down at Bird's Beach as well, and I asked the question, are these temples in the middle of the harbour? And the answer was yes. These temples, these 2 temples that I have come here to, I would not go as far as to say I'm here to activate them. I would say I'm definitely, my feeling was when I got the email from this woman, I was here to acknowledge their presence and maybe bring a team of people together to eventually activate them energetically. And when I got the funny thing was, when I was driving down to Bird's Beach on the way down there, as I passed Atiu Creek Regional Park, I began to get little electrical tingles all over my body. And now I'm up here and on this landing, looking down behind me at the regional park. They're not there anymore. But when I got down towards Bird's Beach, a kotare, a kingfisher, which is on my left arm, there, that's a Haida kingfisher. But a kingfisher flew past my van, my totem. One of my totems is a kingfisher. It flew past my van as I was driving towards Bird's Beach. When I get down to Bird's Beach, there's one camper van down parked up right at the end of the beach, and on the camper van it had the word written, the camper van style, the camper van model was called Dreamtime. And the camper van itself was called Escape Pod, which for me, I question and I wonder whether these temples over here, these Lemurian temples, were that too, where they were escape pods for a population of Lemurians that built when the sea level was way, way lower, that built these temples, escape pods, portals, potentially, somewhere around the edges or in what's now become the Kaipara Harbour full of water, whether these Lemurians built these temples as escape pods for when the Lemurian continent began to sink and the gas pockets beneath the continent in the Pacific popped and the actual continent began to sink, leaving only the mountaintops, which now become the islands of Polynesia and the islands of Micronesia, Melanesia, and here, maybe too. But I wonder if those temples that are down there are somewhere near this site down here where they had Earthbeat. And that somewhere in the inlet or just beyond the inlet are the temples beneath the ocean. And they could be there physically and in the sense of like this frequency band that we're in right now, that I'm talking to you in, right? That I'm inhabiting. We all inhabit this frequency band, that they're on this level, they are sunken beneath the water. They're actually sunken beneath the water and potentially covered in seaweed or covered in rocks or barnacles, but they're there. they're there. But on another level of existence, like a cosmic radio, if you tune the dial from 91.8 FM to 99, the water isn't there. And it's all dry land through there. Maybe a river going through it, but there's the temples and settlement around the temples. All the temples are there, and around the temple spaces is just land, dry land, alluvial plain even. I'd love to get on a boat and go out into the harbour with a pendulum and work with that energy. I really would love to go out there on a boat with a pendulum and go out with the pendulum across the boat, across the harbour, even staying on the boat the night out in the harbour as well, and looking for these temples energetically. And then maybe if we get a hit, even getting a submersible, remote controlled, and sending it down to see if we can see anything, because the depth of the harbour, it could be quite shallow. It could be 20-30 metres. I'm not sure how deep the Kaipara goes, but it could be very shallow, 15-10 metres. I know it's very sharky in that harbour, because I know when I was a kid, funnily enough, when I was a kid, well, when I was at high school, one of my friends, Aidan, my other friend John and I, it was me, Aidan and John, and a guy called Rickard who came up later on, exchange student from Sweden. We went over to Tinopai, which is at the northern end of this harbour, one of the inlets. There's a little settlement there. And my friend Aidan's family had a batch over there in Tinopai. And we took a boat out once. We came up after school on a Friday night. There was three of us, and Rickard came the next day. But me and John and Aidan went out on a little boat, went fishing out in the harbour behind me here. And a storm came in, and we were out in a little boat fishing for whatever we could catch. Got a couple of fish, and he told us these stories about the sharks, how big the sharks could get in that harbour. And we had a very sharky experience where Aidan got a 2-ton steel trace, put a sheep's head through on a massive hook, tied it to the boat oar, and then threw it off the side of this little 14-foot long dinghy, threw it over the side, and then with a buoy attached to it, so if a shark did bite it or take the sheep's head and pulled it, the buoy would be like the first thing we'd know that something big had taken this bait and ran with it. Well, a storm came in from the northwest while we were on the boat. And think about it. I was on a boat in Tinopai, out in the middle of the harbour, near Tinopai, but out in the harbour. I would have been 16 years old. And I could have been potentially very, very close to where that temple was, or temples were. And a storm came in from the northwest, and Aidan put up the awning over the boat, but we were getting absolutely drenched. We ended up, just before we were about to take off, the steel trace took off on the boat, and the boat went like that. And Aidan, me and John climbed to one side of the boat. Aidan went over to the steel trace and just cut the nylon fishing line attached to the steel trace, and let it go. And we watched the buoy go flying out into the ocean, was just pulled out into the ocean in the Kaipara, and we made it beeline for the shore. So I wonder if we were at that moment. I was drawn to be up there, to be activated as a 16, 17-year-old boy or young man, to be activated, to be brought here, to come here many years later, to know that from Tinopai maybe, which is over that way there, to the northwest, that's the location where I can actually access, well, by boat potentially, where the temples are in the harbour, if that is such a thing. And I'm open to it. You know, when I heard this woman say that there were temples out there, and when she described the elders, the Lemurian elders that were with her, explaining to her in their own way, talking to her in their own way, that I was the one that needed to come and find these, not because I'm something special, but because I have a connection to this energy and this location. I have to wonder whether that experience in Tinapai out in the harbour when I was 16, maybe we were right above something deep below us that activated in me, and I activated in it, a remembrance of a connection that we had many, many lifetimes ago. Well, maybe not even, if time isn't linear. In that moment, a part of my own self, another level of existence, another frequency beneath me, where there was no water, because it was in an alluvial plain, because there's no heart, there's not like this at all, the ocean levels are way lower. Maybe there was a connection there, boom, boom. And that's why I have to come back here at some point and camp here tonight, I think, for a couple of nights and drop into the energy of this place. And maybe go around to the northwest as well. And also the end of South Head, which is the entrance to the harbour, and feel more into this energy and do a lot more work up here, because there's something very mysterious. But I have a feeling that Earthbeat Festival back here was there for a reason. I'm going to have a word to one of the guys from the button factory in Auckland here, Sena Safari, who is one of the creators of Earthbeat. I'm going to ask him why they decided to have the festival here. Thanks for watching, I truly appreciate it. Mate wa. I'll see you again soon.